welcome to The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit. This is a review for the Acolyte episode 4. Straight off the bat, 7 out of 10. Why 7 out of 10? Well, it only got a 7 out of 10 because, technically, of the ending. The ending in the last 15 seconds, really got to the juicy point that we were all sort of waiting for, even though it was a bit typical, nothing original about an entrance, besides its creepy way of landing into the actual episode. But the first chunk, let's call it, that when I say first chunk, that's every part of the episode besides the last 15 seconds, was pretty much a journey and lead up to this point. And I think in that point, in that area, it was a 5 out of 10. It was just way too stretched out in storytelling and things like that. It was really, it just let go of interesting plot, interesting anything, and just was a journey. It almost sort of had a Lord of the Rings feel with a sort of a bland way of putting it. I liked the episode, but I think this type of episode should have been episode 1, but obviously with more detail into our characters that we have. Not about getting straight to the point, but the thing is, the Acolyte, to most of us hardcore Star Wars fans, was portrayed to be something like this, really dark, twisted, Sith Lord type of explanation almost. And it was and so far we've had a feel to the series, in my opinion, it's almost prequel. It's almost sort of, it's got a prequel look. And that's fine, but it's not what we were really invested in with this particular thing. Now, I like the Acolyte. I don't love it, but I like it. It's definitely, with this episode, as Leslie, I think the creator, that's her surname or first name, I can never remember, but she did say that episode 5 is the one to watch out for. And the next episode is episode 5, just after this guy has been introduced to us in episode 4, which now I'm really looking forward to for 2 reasons. The fact that it ended off in a cliffhanger like this, and that she has said that episode 5 is the thing. So episode 5 really needs to hit a 10 for, I think, the fans, other than myself, to really be invested in this story and not be so bland and lead up in storytelling. I think there's lots of components to the actual story so far that is interesting and good and a variation, but not far from a variation. Look, last week's episode 4, created within the online community, from what I can tell, a lot of discuss. A lot of people just did not like episode 4, comparing it to one of their worst moments in Star Wars history. I personally don't hold it in a, like the highest thing, but I do not think it's the worst thing. I think it had merit, but it definitely was, I think, a dividing episode, which is you either love it or hate it. Getting started so far late in the series, which is now, this is episode 4, at the end of episode 4. This is why it should have been episode 1. It needed to take intrigue from the beginning and create the, sort of feel from that point. But it's sort of been lagged behind. I'm sort of wishing that next week is going to be an awesome week in the Acolyte and Star Wars, but that aside, so I gave it really a 7 out of 10, this particular episode. It's definitely a worth watch. especially the last 15 seconds. But that's, don't have yourself set up for like an amazing episode, just sort of like a really creepy sort of thing at the end. Anyway, so that's my review for the Acolyte episode 4. I should be back next week a bit earlier. I'm dropping a review, wishingly. But yeah, look, at the moment, look, to news that is in with Star Wars at the moment, the biggest news this week is apparently there is an official announcement that the Rey movie that we're getting, so far there's 3 movies that have been announced. There's a Rey movie, there's a Mandalorian movie, and there's also a movie about where the Force began. For me, the most interesting of all of them, I think really are each and one of them, but I think the Force one would be the most interesting one that I have. I'm not into prequels, never have been into prequels. I wish the story would keep going forward. I've had this desire, like I can remember when the special editions of the originals came out in, I think it was 97 or 96. And the fact they announced that it was a new Star Wars film coming out, at that time we didn't know what it was. And then it was known as episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3. And I've gone, oh, I wish it went forward, not backwards. But, I thought, well, if they're going to go backwards, at that time, if you have a version of the internet, there was a pathway for 7, 8, and 9, even with George Lucas. But then 7, 8, and 9, after a couple of years, I think it was dropped from the internet side, and they just stuck with 1, 2, and 3 because it takes a while to make a Star Wars film, 1, 2, and 3. And I think George Lucas was done. So 7, 8, and 9 was just put on the dust shelves, and then obviously, many years later, it was sold to Disney, and this is where we are now. But Star Wars, so the movie that has been announced is, which I said would work, and I think would be the obvious next step if you're going to have a Rey movie, is episode 10. So it's been announced, not officially completely 100% yet, but that the Rey movie will be episode 10, and the title is called A New Beginning. I don't think it's going to be called A New Beginning. I think the title will be very similar to that, but I don't think it's going to be that. That's what has been said. It is not official 100%, but that's the news that's out there at the moment. The Rey movie will be known as episode 10, and at the moment it's called A New Beginning. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, so that's pretty much the news for this time around. Until next week, my friends, keep rocking.